all miss the direction. So I will go to 5 points as to how sports can actually add value in our area of empowering our women and the girl child. Number 1, we must realize that sports, all kinds of sports, be it football, be it volleyball, be it any kind of sports, have its own rules and regulations, and they are usually well coordinated things that are done, and in those people who are trained in sports, they are also taught, to have no violence, to coordinate properly, to engage with their people, with their counterparts.
Gender-based violence.
And therefore, to me, sports is one thing that even if that child missed it at the family level, but we should not lose hope. Even that child going to ECD or primary school, we should start sports early enough. And I'll go to my point number 2, whereby if we do expose our girls and give them an opportunity to explore their potential, yeah, and nurture their talent in sports, if we do that and grow them up, then we'll go to number 3. Number 3 is where we can actually create employment for these girls. There's a very good example at MTG with a girl called Mbeyu Akida, who went through there today. She's an international football player. And if she does come to her community, definitely the girls will look at her as a role model. And as she comes back, internationally, they earn good money. They earn good money than other professionals. I'm sure that person, knowing where they come from, they'll come back to their village and ensure that people around their village are also brought up and economically empowered. So that's another area that I can see where sports can play a very big role. Now, another thing is sports is an avenue to bring girls together. When they get together for their training exercises, but we also have talks for them. We have sexual reproductive health rights talks with them. We have life skills talks with them, so that they become responsible young citizens, not only of Kilifi, but for Kenya. And therefore it puts discipline in them. Yeah, better than that girl who is in the streets randararing, we don't know what they're doing, engaging in other behaviors. So we should try very hard, no matter what sport it is. Today we are talking about football, but there are many other sports that we can engage our girls and they can grow up, get their talent and grow up with them. Then the last, 5th and most, me as a health doctor, I would say if you engage in sports activities, then we prevent a lot of lifestyle diseases. Because with sports, you're definitely encouraged to have a good diet, nutrition, and do exercises on a daily basis. And therefore, you prevent lifestyle diseases like hypertension, diabetes, heart problems. And those are the people who are at high risk of COVID-19 right now. Issues of obesity. So if our girls are involved in this sporting activity, I'm sure we will see them healthy, controlling their weight, eating good food, and preventing, in the end of the day, lifestyle diseases. So For me, I would say moving the goalposts, you've come at the right time. There'll be a lot of things to discuss about here in terms of question. What have we done? As I told you, as a county, we've established a task force. We are finishing our FGDs and our KI. By end of December, we should be having a report. Come January, we should actually have a report to know our root cause analysis of what contributes to teenage pregnancies, what contributes to GBV in our setup. Because as we are talking with COVID-19, you know, thing number one that comes up as a challenge is poverty. Kilifi will always cry about poverty, but until when are we going to be crying about poverty? It is time now to empower our girls and women, to be able to provide for their family unit. If we do provide for the family, the basic needs, the basic needs of shelter, of education, of food. And I think that social fabric at a family level will be strong enough to bring children who have moral values, who have good behavior, because it will be inculcated to them by their parents. And now as they come to school, the teachers play a role. And of course, now we are talking about creating an avenue for sports. So I would want to leave it there. We can complain about so many issues here, about poverty, about poor parenting, about family breakup, about low levels of education, but all that, it will not come if we could actually manage to put people at the household level as a family, as one family unit. Father to be responsible, a mother to be responsible, get basic shelter, go to school, and most of these social issues will be tackled. So I want to leave it there, and I'm opening the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Indeed, those were very important highlights. And I just want to reiterate that the doctor has said that it's important for us to invest a lot of our resources in research, and also important to intervene when you understand the root cause of the problem. And thank you, Dr. I know you're leading this in
11:30. I'm still here with you up to 11:30.
Yes, thank you. So I'm saying thank you for leading the research and helping us understand our situation better. And we hope to have the report and share it with the partners who are here today so that they can understand what are the issues that are affecting. Thank you so much. We'll move to our next speaker. I had introduced him. His name is John Okwemba. He's the Senior Manager, Partnerships and Linkages at Kenya Academy of Sports. Welcome, Mr. John. Kindly give us your brief remarks.
Thank you so much. Sorry for the late joining up, but I hope I've listened to Daktari and I'm in agreement with all the sentiments. The Kenya Academy of Sports was created in 2013 by the Sports Act. And this is an institution that specializes in sports talent development, capacity building of sports technical personnel, and conducting research in sports. We are a young institution and we are on course. Maybe because of time, I may not share a lot, but I will share just I'll send a brief presentation just for your own consumption later on. But the Academy has programs in talent development, and it observes equity in gender representation. And we give equal opportunity to both girls and boys in talent development. And in fact, in our performance contracting, the gender mainstreaming is so strong, and we keep reporting on it in every quarter. Sports as a tool for advocacy, we know it is strong in communicating issues of peace, communicating issues of empowerment, and therefore for the girl child and those who are vulnerable, it gives them a good opportunity to share what they have in that they go through in their social life. In the academy also, in our curriculum, we have life skills. And our life skills encompasses issues of self-esteem, issues of entrepreneurship. It also concentrates on grooming, financial information, and social transformation. And all these will help the young girls even be able to defend themselves in areas of threats. We also have recently introduced safeguarding in children policy, and it is on course. We are happy we are working together with GIZ, who have introduced this concept to us. And we are envisaging pushing it up to a national level whereby this policy can be practiced across all federations or across every academy, or where young people are bringing up, they are being mentored in their talents. This will help also address issues of gender violence and exploitation, both for boys and girls. And therefore we are we are soon presenting it to our council for approval, and then we shall go through the necessary government institutions for its implementation and acceptance. We also wish to reiterate that we have partnered with several organizations in sports for development, because sports for development is a good avenue for advocacy on issues that affect young people, and especially the girls. And therefore, we are working together with federations, national organizations, county governments, in order to make sure that we carry out we make sure that sports is professionalized through talent development, setting up new areas for talent development, capacity building sports technical personnel, giving them information, because once they have information, then they will not go astray. In fact, we were in Kwale and carried out a sensitization on sports, safeguarding in sports among the sports officials from all the 47 counties. So we hope to work together with other similar organizations to make sure that we are able to help the young people use sports as an avenue to their career. And the academy gives that opportunity for them to use the sports in order to develop a sustainable career that can give them a livelihood. We are also very key on the recently reforms in education, the CBC, and therefore the academy creates a very good platform for implementation of the CBC, especially from the young people who have finished school as they cross over to the professional sports. Thank you for giving us this opportunity. We know we will work together with Moving the Goalposts and other organizations of similar mandates, and make sure that all people in sports get what is right for them. Thank you.
Thank you so much, John, for the brief remarks. And we hope to partner with the Kenya Academy of Sports. Indeed, most of the participants who are here are looking forward to know more about the Academy of Sport and the new things that you have in place to work with us and to work with communities that are interested in advancing the area of sport. I want us to move to the next segment. We are a bit late. And this segment will be led by Ms. Jane Kamau from UNESCO. And she will be speaking to, she will introduce her panelists to us in a minute. She will be speaking to Reverend Jane Nganga from the National Coordination. And also she'll be speaking to Ms. Lucy Kimondo. So welcome, Jen.
Thank you very much, Dorcas. And Let me try to put my camera. I hope it won't. So thank you very much, Dorcas, and thank you, Daktari and John. It's good to hear how we can actually utilize the sports platform to address the issues that are affecting, and especially the young people. So this morning we've heard that the issue of teenage pregnancy continues to be one of the issues faced in Kilifi, in the coastal region, and that is not just in the coastal region. It's something that is affecting the whole country. And this morning we are going to hear from our panelists, people who have been working in this area, and therefore, instead of Lucy Kemondo, we are honored to have Mercy Chege. Mercy Chege is a program manager at Plan International Kenya, and Plan has many programs in the coastal region. And therefore, I want to invite my colleague Mercy to just come and talk to us about in about 5 to 10 minutes. Welcome, Mercy.
Thank you, Jane. I will also just put on my camera for a bit so that it doesn't interfere with my internet. And then after that, I will switch it off. I'm happy to be here today. My name is Mercy Chege. I'm the Director of Programs from Plan International. You will allow me to switch off so that it doesn't interfere with my network. Yeah, so I'm glad to be here this morning, and because I know that you had a challenge in the morning with the Zoom link, I will not take long so that we can have we can save on some time. And I'm glad to be part of this panel today, and also to listen to the discussions. I also know that Plan International in Kwale and Kilifi have at one point or the other worked with Moving Goalposts. So I know the kind of work that you're doing and how important it is. So I'll just briefly talk about teenage pregnancies and maybe some of the things that we need to know or we need to be aware of, and some of maybe the drivers to teenage pregnancies. The statistics from Dr. Anissa are not shocking because we know about them, we had heard about them, but it's very sad, and I'm sure Dr. Anissa would say this for the county government, when you see 15,000 girls pregnant in 1 year. It pains the hearts of people who are in authority and people who are responsible for safeguarding and protection of young people. And that is because you realize that once you get pregnant, for a girl to get pregnant is very expensive. You immediately lose out on about a year of school. And within that 1 year, a lot of things can happen, and you may not even be able to go back to school. And when you go back to school, it comes with its own challenges. The government has really tried so much to even put together a policy that enables the young people who drop out of school. And this is not just about girls. Yes, girls, because they're the ones who are mostly affected by teenage pregnancies, but also boys who fall out of school because of one or the other reason. And there's the return to school policy. Sometimes, as much as we would want to implement that policy, it comes with its own challenges. And some of the challenges pregnant girls face is that you cannot be allowed to stay in school until you're ready to give birth. One, the distances between where you're coming from and school, they might be a danger to yourself, and also the stigma and going to to sit in class with the other girls. You may not be able to concentrate on school. So sometimes girls end up dropping out of school for a very long time. 1 year is a very long time. If you look at the situation we are in right now, we have lost a whole year. And you even saw some young people saying that instead of wasting my whole year, I would rather commit suicide. Some children in our neighborhood actually committed. One boy committed suicide because of missing out on school. I don't know what plans he had, or he was just depressed. But you can see how expensive it can be to lose a whole year of school. And it's not just school. You lose a whole year from your own development. The development of a young person between 0 and 24 years, it is so important because there are milestones you have to cover for you to be able to have a successful life. When you lose out on one whole year because you needed to go and get a baby, nurse the baby for 3 months, and wait for the next first term to come so that you join school, it becomes a very expensive venture for the girl. And you realize that as much as we would want to say that the boys would be responsible and they would also suffer in the process, you know, they don't have to drop out of school. So all these things are, you know, these are things that we need to consider. Some of the opportunities, I'm glad to hear the opportunities that are there at the sports academy, because I think it is important for you to be aware of the opportunities that you can have in sporting, other than just making sure that you're safe from non-communicable diseases like Dr. Anissa has mentioned. Sporting is very good to keep you fit, to keep away the diseases, and also to, you know, to keep you active. And I think it is very helpful. But you also see that you can make a living out of the sporting, which is very good. And that's why we have the academy. We also have the Ministry of Youth. And the other day I had an opportunity to just interact with them. And there are massive opportunities under the Ministry of Youth where you can be able to get to earn a living. One of the things that we all know is that 30% of the government procurement is supposed to go to people under the age of 30. And those are some of the opportunities that you need to know about, so that you can form yourselves into a group, even like a sports group like this one. As you go about your your work and your sports, you can also be able to probably supply to the Ministry of Sports some of the opportunities that come by. So all this is important for keeping you busy, because when you're not busy as a young person, you want to look for something to do, and that energy can be sometimes very dangerous, because you can get into a relationship that leads into a pregnancy and loss of your loss of your direction for a while. Not only that, there are some other pregnancies that come out of rape or defilement if you're under 18, and sometimes you do not know what to do. A sports group like this one is so important, because it also provides an opportunity for you to be able to speak to somebody. So that peer support, even as you go on about your sports, is very important, because for a young person, you realize that you need someone to talk to. There is usually a referral mechanism. Please make sure that if you get into trouble, you talk to somebody. We have youth-friendly spaces. Dr. Anissa probably can talk about that. The youth-friendly spaces that are provided for by the government, you can get advice from there. The problem with getting advice from peers is sometimes that we are all misinformed, and we might actually just, perpetuate that misinformation, and it becomes very expensive. Some of the reasons why young people are actually very desperate is because once you get pregnant, you want to go through an abortion, and because you don't want to do it in a hospital, it is not allowed. You go and do it at the back street, and it becomes a problem. It spoils your career, it spoils your opportunities in school, and eventually you find yourself with a medical problem. So again, the youth-friendly spaces, you'll be able to get all the information that you will need about your sexual and reproductive health. The lack of information is one reason why we are having teenage pregnancies. That is why we don't know how to handle our own sexuality, and that is why we are getting in trouble and going through very risky abortion processes that might ruin your life. So it's important for us to have the right information, both to make sure that we don't get pregnant, and in the event that you get pregnant, how do you handle that? What do you do with your baby? There's a lot of support that you will need to go through that process. But my prayer is that none of us have to go through that process, because you will have the information that you will need to carry about yourself and your aspirations, your education, and your sporting career in a way that you do not have to get interrupted by teenage pregnancies. Remember, we also have the issue of having worked in Kilifi and Kwale for a very long time, and also Mombasa, we know the issue of the boda riders, and sometimes how they land young girls in trouble, because you will accept a lift so that you can get the 50 bob to go and get the pads. So we know that the government, especially in schools, I don't know how many of you are in school, but we know that the government has a program where they distribute pads for school-going girls. If that is available for you, I haven't quite asked about the age and of the girls who are in the sports group, but it is important for you to know it is better for you to struggle with your menses and use some clean materials that can be recycled, other than befriending somebody so that you can get the pads, because eventually that will land you in trouble, and it's a problem that will be with you for a very long time. So there are some things that can solve an immediate problem and create for you a long-term problem. And that's what we are realizing as Plan International. Most of our girls, especially school going, that is one of the major issues that you'll have. Again, as a team, you can decide, you can discuss and find out, how do we overcome this problem? How do we get recycled, like some reusable pads? How do we purchase them at an affordable rate so that girls don't have to go for sex for pads, as we call it, mostly in Coast, in Central, and in Nyanza. So those are some of the things that we are struggling with. As young girls who are aspiring, it's important that you know that you have the right to speak out. It is important that you know you have a right to address your leaders. Sometimes if you realize that it is so insecure, your voice is so important, and you can be able to approach your local government, your county government, and say, when we are walking home from sports, or when we are walking from home to go to the playing field, we are having this problem. Can you address this, because we feel insecure? So that respectful but very firm approaching, advocacy for your local leaders to provide the security and the safeguarding measures that are needed, both within your organization and even outside the organization. The protection that you need when you're going home is very important, because we realize that some of the pregnancies are actually due to rape. But you realize that even when that happens, sometimes we know who are the perpetrators, and sometimes we don't speak because we are afraid, or because we think that when we go to the police, the police stations are not very friendly. Those are some of the issues you should be addressing with your OCPD, with your OCS, and I can assure you, having worked with the government structures, for as long as they know there is a problem, for as long as it has been reported to them, there is always a mechanism of making it right. Problem is when we don't speak and when they don't know what we are suffering from, then it becomes a problem. So in other words, what I'm telling you girls, that it's so important that you take charge of your safety and in preventing pregnancies that are not wanted, that come in teenage and young adulthood when you're at the prime of your life. And it is possible to do that. You speak it out, make sure that you know the referral mechanism in case you have a problem. The first stop is the police station, the second stop is the hospital, and you make sure that you can be able to report that. And the other most important thing is that you need to speak to somebody, because it's a very traumatizing experience for you to have gone through, and before you even get pregnant, there's something that you can do. But I want to emphasize the need for you to identify the youth-friendly spaces in your neighborhood where you can just approach a health worker who can give you the information that you need. That's what we are encouraging the young people to do. Please speak out. Please make sure you have the right information and get that information from a trusted source. The youth-friendly spaces, very important, and the organization where you're having the moving goalposts, I'm sure there is a lot of information that you can get. Just make sure that you get the right information for you to be able to keep yourself from teenage pregnancies, and if you get into trouble, where you can report. So I want to stop there because we started late and we need to give opportunities to the other speakers. But I also want to congratulate you for being for choosing sports as a way of life and as a way of earning an income and keeping you busy. And I'm sure that we'll be interacting, especially with the plan in Kilifi and in Kwale. Thank you so much, Jane, for the opportunity. And I hope that we can be able to, as young people, we can be able to raise our voices against teenage pregnancies so that they do not hamper our development and our ability to progress and prosper in life, so that we can get equal. It's an issue of girls getting equal opportunities with the boys so that they can compete to become productive citizens. So thank you so much, everyone, and thanks, Jane, for the invitation.
Thank you very much, Mercy, for highlighting the issues of teenage pregnancy, taking us through of what a girl stands to lose in case she gets pregnant, the available opportunities that are there, the school reentry guidelines, the steps to go and seek services, and more so the role of men or the boys in terms of addressing the issue of teenage pregnancy and how we can leverage on the sports. And I'm sure when the moving goalposts have another opportunity, we'll engage you so that, because I think because of the limited time, I'm sure you're not able to share all, but you'll still be in the forum in case there are any questions. Thank you very much once again, Mercy. So now we are moving to our second speaker. And the second speaker, yesterday when I made the presentation, I say that we have worked with the religious community. And today we are honored to have Reverend Jane Nganga. She's an ordained pastor. And apart from that, she's heading in Herrera, that is an international religious network of religious network, and I'm sure she's going to talk more about it, but she's also going to talk about the issues of teenage pregnancy and what the religious community, the faith community are doing to address this, and especially now in response to COVID-19. And therefore, I take this opportunity to welcome Reverend Jane to speak to us. Maybe, Reverend, you could put your camera first.
Okay.
So that people can see you. And thank you and welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jane. It's a pleasure to be here, and I really appreciate this opportunity because the intersection with religious leaders is critical, and I'm glad to hear what is happening through. Okay. Thank you. If we can keep our mic muted, so that it becomes easier for us to communicate. Thank you so much. So I'll be speaking a bit of what we are doing right now, and especially what we've been able to do during this COVID season to address the issues of teenage pregnancies. And allow me just to put off my mic because of the internet, my video because of internet. But just to say that indeed religious leaders, they have a great opportunity to engage. They have influence, social influence. They have influence around moral values, around traditions, and other issues that affect the community. And therefore, having them on board as a partner in terms of ending teenage pregnancies is very critical. Religious leaders also collaborate with parents, and there's always that great opportunity for them to be able to promote awareness around sexual and reproductive health issues affecting young people, and even more so, how the parents can acquire skills to be able to work with the adolescents and young people. Because at the end of the day, for me, I believe the buck stops with the parent, and if there's proper grounding at home level, then it becomes easier for the rest of us to come on board and provide that extra support. But if there's no support, there's no information being given at the family level, sometimes we get to realize when it is too late. Religious leaders, they have that opportunity to discuss different family models, and really to help provide the skills necessary for either child-headed families or single parent headed families, just providing the right skills and the right information for such families to be able to thrive in terms of bringing up their children. They also increase and influence public knowledge and opinion. We know that a lot of times we meet in faith communities, sometimes on a daily basis, or at least every weekend. Most of us Kenyans, we are religious, 97%. That's the recent data of Kenyans are religious. And therefore, all these platforms are platforms where we can engage with the community. We can change perceptions. We can influence knowledge and opinions even around some of these critical issues. And therefore, the place of religious leaders is very, very, very important, and especially in shaping how we address the issue of teenage pregnancies. I don't want to go into data because I know we have already interacted with it. But what we have been doing is that we are bringing religious leaders to speed in terms of information. And I want to say that there has been that gap, that religious leaders find themselves overwhelmed because an issue comes, but they do not a lot of times have the capacity to address it because of sometimes limitation in terms of information. And we've been able to bridge that gap and ensure that they are updated, even in terms of data, what is happening, some of the social issues that are affecting our people, and especially around the issue of teenage pregnancies. And therefore, we have been updating them around this time or with data on what is happening. And also, we have also been looking at the vulnerabilities, an analysis of the vulnerabilities that are affecting the girls, but also the young men, because we believe also targeting young men is also very, very important. We know that some of the pregnancies have been as a result of having sex with the young men. So we have analyzed some of the issues, and we have been doing theological reflection around the issues, and we are grateful because of this partnership we have had with UNESCO. One of the vulnerabilities we have been looking at is rape, and how we can be able to give information and messages to the young people to be able to, to prevent rape, and also at the community level for prevention of rape. The issue of defilement, the issue of poverty, early marriages, the issue of peer pressure, drugs abuse, the lack of youth-friendly services, issues that are family related, because again, we know a lot of the young people are becoming vulnerable because of challenges within their home settings. There's also the lack of information among the young people, causing them to be vulnerable. There's curiosity or the desire to experiment. So we have realized that these vulnerabilities, we must start, talking about it. We must start giving messages that are also theologically reflected to our young people, and especially within the faith community, so that they can be able to address those issues and be able to live on. What we have also done is that through forging partnerships with UNESCO, with the National Association of the Christian Chaplains and chaplains from other faiths, because we realize it is very important to bring chaplains on board. We have been able to avail tools for engagement by religious leaders. There's a toolkit that was developed at the global level, focusing on religious leaders and how they are able to address age-appropriate sexuality, reproductive health information. And we have been able to contextualize it to a great extent to the Kenyan context. And we are availing this as a tool that religious leaders can use to provide information to parents, to young people, and all that. There is a handbook that goes along with it. We have also been able to contextualize it so that they are able to provide the necessary content. We have trained quite a number of religious leaders during this COVID season, and they are more alert to engage with the young people to provide the necessary information. We've also been training school chaplains in preparation to even the school reopening, because in fact, there's a training going on right now. And in the morning, we were discussing and saying, the chaplains need to be prepared to handle the young people as they go back to school. We know there are some who have engaged in drugs and substance abuse. We know there are some who have engaged in other risky behaviors that could have made them, have a change of attitude in behavior, have a change of attitude in even, school. And therefore the chaplains need to be ready to support these children, so that we do not have them dropping out of school because the school system does not understand what has happened to this particular child. And therefore we are training them right now and preparing them to be ready to address some of those challenges. Maybe there could be some girls will go back pregnant, and they need to be ready to provide the necessary support to these children. We've also been involved in intergenerational dialogues with the young people, because we also feel it is important to hear out the young people. What are the issues? Where does it pain most? what are those issues that that probably we think are there, and probably some we don't even know that are happening, and how best can we come in as religious leaders, as parents. So we are also holding these intergenerational dialogues. And of course, as I said earlier, we are also doing a lot of theological reflections and providing messages targeting both parents, targeting guardians, targeting adolescents and young people, and religious leaders themselves, because we need everyone on board to support these adolescents and young people. The other emphasis that we are laying is on, in terms of supporting the adolescents and young people on positive sexual behavior. And providing the necessary life skills for them. Skills are around self-awareness, around critical thinking, creative thinking, decision-making, effective communication, coping with stress, coping with emotions, because even within this period of COVID, there has been a lot of stress that even the young people have had to go through. And therefore, just providing the religious leaders these skills so that they are able to support either through various social media platforms, but also in person, because at least now the congregations are open for physical meetings, so that they are able to provide them with the necessary support. We have also provided them with skills on how to support adolescents and young people to say no to peer pressure, being able to stand for one's own values and needs, and including one's own values around their own spirituality, that you don't have to flow with something because it looks like the in thing, but you can stand for what you believe in, and taking control of one's own decisions, and to trust one's own feelings and values, and being able to recognize the attempts of others to control someone. So such skills that they are able to deal with peer pressure, and they are able to stand out and speak. The whole issue around drugs has also been a core issue that we have also been training religious leaders on, so that they are able to detect.
Kindly summarize so that we can go to the speaker. Thank you so much.
In 2 minutes, I'll be done. So the whole issue around drugs and giving religious leaders the right information, and even how to detect if someone is already using drugs, and of course also issues around early marriages and how they can advocate, because these are context-based issues, so that they are not left behind. They are also speaking out and working with the parents and supporting parents. And of course, sexual and gender-based violence, we have been able to build their capacity to address that, and more importantly, counseling and support for the adolescents who have given birth, or those who are expecting right now, providing them with counseling and support, and more so creating the linkages and support within the family setting, because a lot of times we've seen parents being very negative, and they don't want to see these girls anymore. So religious leaders have been acting, and we are providing them the skills to act as a link between them. And finally, just helping them support parents to keep children in school, and to keep talking to them at all times, and to keep them morally and spiritually grounded, which is very, very critical. So that's some of the work we are doing, and we would look forward to even intersecting with the different partners who are in this forum, so that we can bring religious leaders on board, because they are core in this process. Thank you for the time.
So thank you very much, Jane,
over to you.
Thank you very much for reminding us and telling and showing us that the religious leaders are not left out, and I'm sure you are working with the religious community from all faiths, and it's good to know that they are keen on addressing this. I know we could be having several questions, but we still have one more speaker, and because of another engagement, we are having a staff meeting which I'm supposed to join. I want to hand over to Dorcas to moderate the remaining part of the session, And I take this opportunity to thank you, Dorcas, and to thank all the participants. And we look forward to working with you. Thank you very much, and enjoy your holiday. And remember to watch Inspector Mwala on Sunday and Monday, and Mother-in-Law on Sunday. We'll be having messages on teenage pregnancy. Thank you very much, and bye-bye.
Thank you, Jen. I'll continue with the moderation, and I hope that you'll come back and join us if you finish your engagement early.
Okay,
I would like to call in the next speaker, who will tell us about herself, her journey in sport. So unfortunately, we didn't have our first communicated speaker, Ese. She had a technical hitch with her computer. So instead we will have Fatime Hamisi, who is here with us. She joined Moving the Goalposts at 9 years. And she will, in 5 minutes, Fatime, tell us about yourself and what any insights about sports values and teenage pregnancies.
Thank you so much, Dorcas. My name is Fatime Tibu. I'll just share with you my screen, then I'll shut it because of the internet. So this is Fatime Tibu from Moving the Goalposts. As Dorcas has said, I joined Moving the Goalposts in the year 2002 when the organization was starting. And being in MTG, I've been able to go in different leadership skills that has enabled me to become who I am today. So through the organizations, I have acquired the peer lady skill. I have also been trained in safeguarding the girls and also being the coach. So currently I'm working here as the head coach of the MTG United teams. So I'll just share some few points on values of football or sports. So there are so many, but I'll just go into 3. So first, I have commitment with me. As a sports lady or a sports woman, you have to be committed, because you know this is your talent, this is your passion, maybe this is something that you are working towards it. So in order for you to become what you want, you need to be committed in that particular time. You have been given an opportunity, so you have to work very hard. A coach can give you a half of the session, but the rest of the session, the 75%, it's you as a player or a sportswoman to work for it. Then another value that you can work for it as a sportswoman, you also need to be reliable. This is something very important, because maybe there are so many players who are relying on you. So in case maybe you miss 1 or 2 things, and these girls are looking at you, they're depending on you, this is something that can also maybe demoralize other girls. And also there is another thing, that the girls are looking, they need someone who can look as their role model in their community. For example, in Kilifi, so mostly in Muslim dominated areas, they don't allow their girls to play football, but through the knowledge or the information from the organization, I can influence some of the Muslim parents or Muslim girls to take part in the sports, so that also they can change and also reduce the teenage pregnancy. So teenage pregnancy is very high in Kilifi or in Coast. This is because most of the organization or most of the people are talking about teenage pregnancy, but do we really find a way to really end the teenage pregnancy? So what I can say is that maybe we need organizations, we need clubs that we can see that sports can bring change, or they can reduce the number of teenage pregnancies. So if we have a lot of organizations that are addressing sports, any particular of sports, not only football. So I think if we have the girls together, they get this information on how they can handle or they can prevent themselves from getting the pregnancy. I think we can have very few numbers that have been shared by Dr. Anissa during her presentation. And also, if we can end the GBV, I think this can also reduce the number of teenage pregnancies, because GBV can also be one of the factors that is making the teenage pregnancy to be very high, because we have a lot of cases, a lot of violence that are happening to women. So in case there is a perpetrator has done something very wrong and you take the case to the police, we know maybe sometimes you can be told, are you just go home and talk all these things in your village? So in case these things are not addressed in accordingly, I don't think if we can end the teenage pregnancy. And also, if we are very keen as organizations or as football clubs or sports organizations, I think we can be in the forefront to address these issues. So maybe you can create a platform where all these perpetrators or all these cases are being addressed and the actions are taken accordingly to how they are supposed to be taken. So for us, during this COVID, we have been very keen, like most of our girls are school-going girls. So we know, I think everyone knows during this corona pandemic, this was like the avenue for most of the girls to get pregnant. But we as organization, we sat down and think what we can do with our girls. So we developed like a particular sessions that are suitable in this corona pandemic. So there were particular sessions that could bring girls together. They share everything that they can share with their peers during the session. And this has also made us, or has bring a lot of impact to our girls, because we have not had a lot of cases. Maybe our girls, they're pregnant, they don't come to the sessions. And also during the pandemic, we also like provided some materials to our girls, the revision materials. So this can also help us to reduce the teenage pregnancy among our girls or the girls in Kilifi, because during in the morning the girl is at the field, in the afternoon maybe she's at home, and she has developed a timetable that she really follows. So she had no time maybe to engage herself in any other bad companies that could lead her to get the pregnancy or to get any other bad thing. Then we also help the girls to create to have session on mental health, because once someone is not settled, maybe she has some stresses. This can also take her to another place. Maybe she can have these border people who can maybe call them. They can share with them, oh, I can provide you anything. Then the girl can easily have maybe sexual intercourse with the boy. Then we can have all these number of teenage pregnancies getting high and high every day. So what I can say is that since we have this platform, we have shared a lot of things. We need to come together and also work and find out a way on how we can help our girls, not only in talking like in an avenue like this one, but after we have been given such opportunities. So we can develop our action and really work on the actions that we have developed, and ensure that everything that we speak, we react on them. Because if we speak, we come here together, we speak everything, and after maybe the meetings or after the event is over, so everyone is going home, I'm not sure if we are going to end the teenage pregnancy. So we have to take responsibilities and everything that we speak on it. Thank you so much, Dorcas.
Thank you, Fatime. Those were indeed very important insights. I just want to take this opportunity to thank the speakers of this session. That is Mercy Chege, Reverend Jane Nganga, and Fatime Hamisi. We'll take the sessions at the end of the second session because our panelists, we have actually a delay in time and our panelists have other engagements. So allow me to keep your comments coming in the chat box, keep your questions coming in the chat box, so that we can move to the next session, so that we don't lose a lot of our panelists. We want to hear from them. We want to hear their experiences. And we want to, as Fatime has said, we want to come up with actions that will help us be very true to ourselves and to the people we serve. So thank you so much. Our next segment will be about resourcing in sport. And one of the things that we know, and I spoke about it yesterday, is that resourcing of sports starts at the household when a parent decides what they will buy for their daughter and what they will buy for their son if they have the two genders. So a lot of the parents would focus on, investing resources in other things for the girl and other things for the boy. And we start seeing a lot of that disparity even in our planning within institutions, our planning within our governments, so that, the resources that go to women's sport might not be, enough to support women to pursue their sport. And we know that women have more needs when it comes to participating in sport. I would like to welcome our next moderator. Her name is Rachel Mudoga. She's a board member of Moving the Goalposts, and she's also the founder and CEO of On Point Policy Advisors. Rachel comes in with the knowledge and skills. She's been part of Moving the Goalposts for quite a long time, and we are still holding on to her. And she'll be speaking to Mr. Herbert Mwachiro, Christine Richter from GIZ, and Lombe, and Ms. Kabanya. So welcome, Rachel. You can take over the session.
Thank you so much, Dorcas, and it's a great honor to be with you this morning. Thank you so much for taking the time and putting together in partnership with UNESCO this amazing platform that's enabling us to have such important conversations on sports for development, sports, and the impact that it can have on our communities. So I'm going to ask my panelists to put on their videos, and recognizing that we have a short time, I'm going to try and be as fast as possible. So as Dorcas mentioned, we are going to be discussing gender equitable sports resourcing. And with this conversation, I'm going to be speaking to Mr. Herbert Mwachiro. Mr. Herbert Mwachiro is the chairperson of the Kenya Private Sector Alliance Committee on Sports, Art and Culture, the sector board that deals with issues of sports, arts and culture. He's also the chairperson of EIK, and he has been involved in both rugby and football associations at management level. I also have Ms. Christine Richter from GIZ. She's the regional manager for the project Sports for Development in Africa. We also have joining us Ms. Lombe Mwambwa, who is the Special Advisor, National Organization for Women in Sports, Physical Activity and Recreation, also known as NAUSPA in Zambia. She's also an alumni of the Anita White Foundation, and she and I share that in common. And we have Ms. Catherine Kabanyana, who is the Senior Program Coordinator, Soccer Without Borders, Uganda. At this point, allow me to give a shout out to Soccer Without Borders Uganda, who are the Beyond Sports Award winner for 2020. And the award that they won is the 2020 Sport for Gender Equality Collective Impact Award. Let's give them a small round of applause. So thank you. Thank you so much, Catherine, and congratulations on the award. And allow me to go straight into the conversation. And we've mentioned, and Dorcas has given us an intro, that we are going to be discussing gender equitable sports resourcing. So if you look on the internet and trying to find any information regarding gender and resourcing of sports. Words like inequality, words like imbalance are the ones that come to you. But in 2017, the Nielsen report told us that women's sponsorship deals for professional sports had rocketed by 47%. This was between 2013 and 2017. And the average value of the partnerships had risen by 38%. But in 2019, we received a report that showed the imbalance of bonuses that were going to be, that had been determined by FIFA actually, for teams participating in the World Cup. For the men's teams, they had been given bonuses to the tune of 400 million for 32 teams, while for the women's team, they had 30 million to be shared amongst the teams. So if you really think about it, 400 million, 30 million. So you already, I am hoping that this information starts to put us in an understanding of the disparity in the resources that are being given to the different, to sports for gender, from a gender perspective. So allow me to put Herbert on the spot first. Herbert, you are in this meeting representing both the private sector and also associations. And really, with these numbers that I have just put on the table, what do these numbers mean? How can this situation be remedied? And what's the role of the private sector? Herbert, over to you.
Thank you very much, Rachel. And first and foremost, I must say that I'm happy to be part of this panel, and thank you to Moving the Goalposts. I must appreciate all women who are involved in sports at an administrative level and also at a participatory level, because it's especially in Kenya and also more so in the coast, women have come a long way. It has taken them a lot of work to break through the traditional barriers that have hindered the development of women's sports and more so resources for women. I must say that looking at what you've said in terms of the numbers and looking at what equity, the issue of being fair and impartial to women in sports is something that has been brought out to the forefront before it was being put behind. But looking at where we have come from, even on a global scale worldwide, women have actually come a long way. There have been more resources starting to be put into into women's sports, maybe not enough as yet, but a lot have been put. I must say that coming back to Kenya, there are no policies at national or even at county or even at federation level that push for filling this gap of gender equality. That is something that is a big gap, something that must be looked into. And it behoves that from forums like this, we drive and advocate for such issues to come into being. When I look at remuneration of our sportswomen, let me take, for example, Vihiga Queens. Vihiga Queens are the national soccer champions from the Kenya Women Premier League, and the highest footballer. And because most of these girls are taking football as a profession now, the highest footballer earns a salary of between 23 to 30,000 shillings a month, which is quite low compared to what men are earning on average in the Premier League. The men are earning between 55 and 60,000 shillings per month. So you can see there's already a big disparity in the earnings for women who are playing at the higher level. I was campaigning for the FKF presidency, and for me, football for women was a standalone pillar in my campaign. And I said that should I have become president, earnings for women would certainly have to be put at the same level as men, especially even at the national level. You see the Harambee Stars and Harambee Starlets, the women starlets, when they went to AFCON and came back, they were given 15,000 shillings. But when the men went to AFCON and came back, they were given 750,000 shillings. So you can see the gap, the difference in there. It's not only a Kenyan problem, because even worldwide, it's only a few federations. I think it's Brazil, Canada, and England that have only recently agreed that the women national teams will be paid at the same level as the men national team. So you can imagine that even on pay, those disparities are still there, and it's something that we must overcome. Women have more challenges in playing sports than men. Let us not take that fact away. We have to recognize it. Their mothers, their sisters, they're the home drivers, if I may say so. And you get situation like, I went around the country and I found that a lot of women who play sport are doing multi-roles. There are very many roles. Some of them are single mothers, some of them are widows, and they still want to participate in sports in communities where the resources are few for women. And at the same time, even it is taboo in some instances for women to be playing sport. So there's need for that opening to allow women to play sport. Even at the county and the national level, the discussion of what resources have to be put for women. Even the CDF that has a sporting element needs to be redefined so that you know what percentage exactly is being factored in for women per se. Globally, if you look at the list of 100 top athletes in the world, you find that no woman makes the cut. It's all men. It's all men. And even when we see the Serena Williams and the Sharapovas and other top women athletes out there, but in terms of them being remunerated or even the resources being put into their part of the sport, it's still something that is low, and that needs to be addressed from a global level. Because if it happens at the global level, it will then happen at the country level. And in Africa, it's even, the gaps are even bigger. When I look at even the roles women play at a leadership level, there are very, very few. I'll take an example of the African Volleyball Confederation. For instance, out of the 54 countries that have members in Africa, only Morocco, Uganda, and Zambia are led by female presidents. That's just 5% of the leadership on the continent. In East Africa, it was only until this year that Simba Sports Club of Tanzania appointed the first female CEO. Yeah, and women are breaking barriers, and it's important that we recognize that when we put women in charge of institutions or organizations, the efficiency, the success rates are much higher than with men, and this needs to come out. In Uganda, the National Sports Council, out of 49 employees, has only 16, which is less than a third of the employees there. So these numbers have to come up, and because when we have less women, then people won't factor in the number of resources that need to be put in. So it's important that we use fora like this to bring about policies, to advocate more. And I'll say that even when we invest in women, the results are there to say. For a long time, if we go to the Olympics for Kenya, it was only the men who have been bringing the gold medals and the silvers and the bronze. But if you look at statistics in recent years, the men have been failing, but it's the women who've been bringing in the medals and putting us up there. Yeah. So we owe our recent success at the Olympic and athletics level to more so women. And it took a long time for women to get there, especially in Kenya, because of the disparity of resources. And this is where even the private sector now comes in with the women-based initiatives. I know the CEC, Dr. Anissa, said that we shouldn't forget the boy child, but the boy child has been privileged for so long. Let the women catch up, let them even go ahead, and then we'll be able to strike a balance. And I know there are a lot of corporates now who want to support women-led initiatives. And that should be encouraged even more, because at the end of the day, we will strike a balance for their success and development. Their challenges have been more than more of the boy child. Parental support, as was mentioned by Dorcas, is something that needs to come out even more, because once parents invest in their own children at an early age, then it makes it even easier for women to break the barriers in sports. I must say that I will commend, especially from the coastal region, Essie Akida, who is now a professional player, and the others who've also taken that route. And also the work that MTG are doing. I did meet one, Lucy Akida. Lucy Akida is now an administration policeman in Nairobi. And she started off at MTG, and it is because of MTG that opened the door for her to get that opportunity. Listening to Fatime Tibu, the head coach, is music to our ears, because we've seen that if we invest in women, then we don't need to have men taking care of women in women's sports, because men don't understand, me being one of them, we don't understand sometimes the needs of our girls or our women in sports, and they need to have their own, who we need to build their capacity so that they can be developed and looked after even more. Let me stop there.
Yes, good, because I do want to come back to you, because you've given us a very good baseline, and I'll come back and challenge you as we go ahead with this forum. Because you've given us, and Herbert, you've given us such good numbers, you've clarified. So we know the theory of the fact that women aren't earning the same, but now you're starting to get us into the why. If women are not in those decision-making places, are not in the boardrooms where decisions are being made, then for sure the income will be limited. Christine, allow me to bring you into this conversation. Herbert has given us the national associations and the private sector component. In Sports for Development, Christine, do you feel that there is equal representation and investment for women in sports? Please proceed.
Thanks a lot, Rachel. Good morning, everyone, or afternoon. It's 3 minutes after 12. Hello from Nairobi. My name is Christine. I'm the regional manager for the GIZ Sport for Development project here in Kenya. I'm very happy also to be today here with you all in the discussion on equitable sports. And I think it's nice to see Herbert also. Hi, Herbert, and all the others. Yes, it's like, I think with sport for development, of course, I think especially for sport for development, one key aspect is gender equality and equity. And sport for development is actually the driving force as an enabler, so to say, for sustainable development. I mean, it's recognized, sport and physical activity is recognized as an enabler to achieve the SDGs, and especially SDG 5. Through, I think, sport for development activities, children and youth are able to learn core competencies, life skills, what we have heard also from the previous speakers. They are able to gain and acquire these core competences, which you are not learning or acquiring in a normal, let's say, setting. So what we are doing here together with the partners in the region, not only in Kenya, we're also working in other countries like Namibia, Senegal, Ethiopia, Ghana, and Cote d'Ivoire. What we are trying together with the partners is really to establish that network, to establish partnerships, because this is really crucial for funding and sourcing, and in sport and sport for development programs. It's the key aspect of linking everyone together, working together on the same aspects, and creating synergies. Here in Kenya, for example, in the aspects of equitable sports and gender equity, we are working very closely, and it's nice to hear also from FKF. We are working very closely with the partners from the FKF in establishing a women's quota, or we established already a women's quota for all its coach qualification trainings. So this is really high on the agenda as well. We have worked very closely also with the FKF branch managers and women representatives in sport for development aspects, in supporting and empowering also girls, but also boys alike, as we heard, in sport for development, but also as GBV prevention programs. We worked also with a lot of partners in creating a first symposium on women's sport and development, really making this emphasis on how and the contribution on women and girls in sports for the society. I mean, sports and physical activities is on one side, yes, of course, it's a source of income in terms of if you have talent and if you have really the sports industry, but you have also the aspects of how beneficial it is on the mental, social, and physical health aspect of everyone, of every individual, and that is the basis actually for society, for each society which is thriving and which is growing. And this targets and addresses women and men alike, and girls and boys alike. What we are also doing together here in Kenya with the partners is we are working very closely with the colleagues from the Ministry of Education and NATCOM, also UNESCO NATCOM. I heard also Dr. Joel Ongoto was in the call in developing a PE and sport policy for basic education, which is inclusive, which is equitable, which is really emphasizing on the aspect of providing sport for development, or physical exercises for everyone, physical education for everyone, boys and girls alike, providing really that enabling environment. And it's because Herbert was also talking about, we don't have policies, and this is what we are trying to work on with the partners here, to really creating these frameworks, legal frameworks, policies to create these enabling environments for boys and girls alike. So the PE and sport policy, it's at the moment in the finalization stage, and we hope next year we can roll it out and really in line with the CBC for the basic education, to link really education from an early age to that progress of talent development, what Dr. Okwemba said in the morning from Kenya Academy of Sports, how to enable that pathway, also career and learning pathway in sports for both girls and boys. We are also, with regards to the aspect of safeguarding, as mentioned already by Cas, the safeguarding in sports policy is another aspect, another policy framework, which is also addressing, of course, the different needs and risks girls and boys and women have and men have in sports and sporting activities. So it's really also to as we heard also from Daktari in the morning, to have really also these the proof, so to say, what is actually understand our root causes for having really targeted interventions. That is one aspect, and then also to having these enabling environments with the policies and legal frameworks to address then the challenges. I think in terms of, yes, partnerships and resourcing, what is crucial and to mention, I think, is really, again, partnerships, linkages. It cannot be done by the government itself. It cannot be done by the civil society actors. It cannot be done by the private sector itself. So everyone needs to work together. And I'm really happy to see in that forum also that we have representatives from different various backgrounds, be it the government, be it civil society, faith-based, and also private sector on board, because it's on all of us to pull these strings together and really create that funding opportunities for sport in Kenya and throughout the region, of course. And one aspect I think I don't want to miss, especially at that point, in these difficult times with COVID-19 pandemic, which is a global crisis affecting a lot of people. And I think what is mentioned now and what was really recognized also now by the UN and also by other state officials is really the importance of sport and physical activity in mitigating the impact of the pandemic and really building, so to say, with this sporting activities and physical exercises, resilient citizens or resilient communities to future crises, which we have, of course. If you are mentally and physical and socially integrated through sport and sporting activities, you are much better also equipped to respond to such a crisis and to have like a network where you can rely on. I think I leave it with that, Rachel, for the moment. And
I'll come back to you for sure. I'll definitely come back to you. So at this point, allow me to bring in Lombe, because I think when we talk about funding and resources and expenditure, feminists have this word that they've coined, the male gaze, which is to say that marketers, people who are looking to do any work, are looking at men as the purchasers, the buyers. How do we engage with the fact that 51% of fans of female sports are actually women? And how do you think we can be able to just phrase this issue on resourcing and also engage with it for effectiveness?
Thank you, and thank you, everyone. It's really good to be here. And I think the starting point of our conversation when we just started with Herbert and everyone was about recognizing that the gaps that are there in resourcing are because of the way our societies are organized historically, and that we've structured our lives and our institutions and cultures and practices in a way that benefits and prioritizes male people more than any other types of people. And so it has followed then that everything that we plan and how we allocate our resources as a society is in the interest of sustaining that way of life and that culture. So ultimately, what we want to see is that our societies are placing equal value on the lives of all people, no matter whether they're male or female or other ways of existing. So within sport, the challenge with pushing for gender equality, as well as in other sectors, has been that any changes that are needing to happen, it's almost as if they're only going to happen if it's going to be of benefit to men as well. And because men are disproportionately in positions of responsibility and decision making, how much is allowed to progress is almost always measured against how does this benefit us. It's the same thing with the business model. There's this push for get more women involved in sports because it's profitable. Get more women into leadership because they will sort out these problems. Women are good leaders. Get women more involved in these places because they're less corrupt and therefore our resources will be taken care of. So it's not in the interest of the bigger objective around gender equality. It's still that utility value of, are women useful? And if they're not useful, then they shouldn't be here. So it's still really a very, it's still from the male gaze, as you say. It's still a very patriarchal way of thinking. So I wanted to draw us back in thinking about resources themselves and what it looks like when we are practicing gender equitable resourcing. From my work within the National Organization of Women in Sports in Zambia, our work mainly is around advocacy for the sports sector to adjust its practices, its policies, and the way it's set up so that girls and women can engage in a more equal basis. And part of what we're advocating for is for sports organizations to be aware of the resource gaps within sport, because sometimes because we work on these issues, we have an awareness that is higher than several other people have, or even other organizations. They go about it on a day-to-day basis, doing things that they have always been done. So what we would like to see is sports organizations who have a keen awareness of the gaps in their resourcing, and also that they're making conscious efforts and deliberate steps to design their sports programming in a way that is considerate of these gaps and these realities. And also to recognize that of course women and different people are variously positioned. So just because you're women or you're men doesn't mean you all have equal opportunity, or you can engage and benefit from sports programs at the same level, because there's a huge difference between women living in the urban areas or those in the rural areas, women with disabilities or without disabilities, and people who are perhaps have gone through high school, or those who haven't. So all these differences in women's realities of how they live their life have to be considered when we think about about how resourcing is done, and as to whether our resourcing is gender equitable or not. And I wanted to also draw our attention in our conversation to consider different types of resourcing. So from our work, we're not only thinking about money and funds, although that's a huge, huge marker or indicator of where priorities are. We also want to show how you can see that that there are gaps in resourcing when we look at the levels of expertise and how that expertise is deployed within the sports sector. So for example, how many high-level coaches, instructors are there who can run a training, and that training is accredited and the graduates will be certified with a recognized credential. And how much time of the year are those people or instructors spending training men to be accredited and moved up and to get credentialed, as opposed to also investing in the training of women and girls? So how we deploy the resources that we have is also a big issue within the sports sector. And this is not only with big federations or with national associations, it's also in sports NGOs and sports federations, as well as the international sports community. So if we can just observe how that is happening, we could create change there. It's also visible in terms of media resources. So the space that is there in newspapers, space on websites and blogs and on national television and radio and all these other media platforms, how is that space allocated? So what is visible is that that's spent more on covering men's sport, on getting male analysts to speak and analyze what's going on within sport and to give their opinions. And it's also getting coverage of sports personalities who are of the male persuasion. So what has happened to considering media as a resource, and especially media that is publicly funded, so the government has a responsibility and an obligation to make sure whatever resources it has currently, that they are distributed fairly across the population. So if we've got 5 hours allocated to sport in a week on national television, how is that spread out? Is it only focusing on sports? And is it only interviewing male people? Is it only male journalists? Is it only profiling and putting images and pictures of what the men are doing? So we have to check those resources that we currently have and how they're being distributed. Resources also could be considered in form of influence. So there's lots of perhaps representatives on sports bodies where decisions are made. But how is that influence being used? What kind of decisions arise out of those platforms? Are those influential decision-making positions only taken up by men and focusing on decisions benefiting men? So let's say, for example, the people who influence what happens in sport or what happens outside of sport, but contribute, their effects contribute to how we engage. How is that influence being utilized? Are they only lobbying to get more funding for sports, for the men to get better uniforms, to get better funding and to travel first class as opposed to travel by bus? What is happening? Could that same influence be used to get better results for the well-being of women and girls and for all genders across, including non-binary people within sport? So let's say, for example, what influence can we garner that it can be used to challenge even exclusionary practices like policies that have been implemented by international athletics that disproportionately affect women? So are we only using our influence when it's situations that affect men, and then we have people speaking out and influencing those policies and influencing resources in that nature? So when we take this broader view of what resources are, we begin to see in what ways our practices are not, cannot be considered equitable, and therefore we are not working towards gender equality appropriately or at the pace that things would move a bit quicker if we were. And I also just mentioned that in terms of funding itself, the lots of funding that is there, and we could argue that there's been increasing funding going towards opportunities for girls and women to participate in sport at different levels. However, if you compare the funding that is there for men and for women, it's for short-term activities. It's for tournaments. It's for camping and training. It's buy uniforms. It's for events or flights or whatever. But where is the long-term investment in that deep work that needs to happen that leads to gender equality? Where is the investment in developing the expertise, in making sure that participation is made possible? Where is the investment in sports facilities that should be located within communities, within people's residential areas? Because we know our society is organized, we organized our domestic arrangements around, as someone earlier said, chores being run by women and girls. So if their hours are dedicated to that at home, they've got less time to involve traveling far away and coming back. So why aren't sports facilities being built in the local community? So when we think about resourcing, let's think about how resources are deployed, how resources are in their diversity, cutting across all the formats of what we need, are being conceptualized, and how they're being even spoken about, and what is even mentioned or not mentioned. Like, we're not talking about resources in terms of, for example, the parliamentary sessions. I don't know if it works the same in Kenya. In Zambia, we have the parliamentary committees on various portfolios. So we have a parliamentary committee on sport. And so their job is to look at all the issues that are arising, and to debate them, and to make necessary, give necessary direction to the sector. So how much time does the parliamentary committee spend discussing issues around gender equality, discussing issues to do with women's well-being and women's access to resources, as opposed to talking about, can the head of the Football Association explain why we had that score at the AFCON? Or can you go and explain why the uniforms were bought late for the men's team that was traveling to wherever? That is what you're spending time on. But time is a resource. As a member of parliament, you have influence, and that's a resource. There's an agenda and a space to drive policy. That is a resource, but it's being used for other things that do not contribute to gender equality. So as a sports sector, if we could expand our interest in where our advocacy is targeted, I think we could make some progress. And I will end there, Rachel, and hear from colleagues what else we have to discuss. And I will apologize in advance because I will have to nip out. I'm unfortunately subscribed on Zoom session, so I'm supposed to be in another meeting, so I apologize.
Wow, lovely. Thank you so much. You've given us so much content, and thinking beyond just the policies that we have started to talk about, but also being able to look at how we as a whole society, so that the issue of financing is only one question, but how we as a whole society dealing with the role and the place of women, and how can we be able to do work to change that. So allow me to bring in
Rachel,
yes.
In closing, maybe I'll just say that it would be really important to remember that ultimately, thinking about gender equitable resourcing, it's a form of affirmative action. Mm-hmm. It's us recognizing that there are gaps and there are injustices that have occurred historically, and therefore we're trying to prioritize certain resource investments because of those gaps. It's not the end. Just because we practice gender equitable resources, we should not say we've arrived. It should be leading towards gender equality in the end. So just to give us that homework of the bigger picture of the challenge we have.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And allow me to bring in Catherine, because at this point, Catherine, one of the issues that actually has come out of Lombe's example that I had prepared to ask you is on financial sustainability. So we know the issue of investment and financing, but financial sustainability and thinking about the long term. And so for you, being able to work with Soccer Without Borders and also engaging with professional sports in Uganda, what are the strategies that you think we need to apply to
Hello. Hello?
Hi, Mina. I think Rachel froze. She was asking you a question. Maybe if you can start answering part one as her internet gets better.
Okay, about financing.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. I'm so privileged to be here on this platform with all the brilliant, amazing people that are here and sharing all this information. Catherine Mina Kabanyana from Soccer Without Borders, Uganda. I'm a senior program coordinator, and we work with urban refugee youth that are out of school. When you look at resourcing when it comes to gender equality and equity in sports, it's a very, very big discussion, mostly when it comes to finances. So what we are trying to build up here at Soccer Without Borders is trying to use gender equity and equality lens in every aspect. And I think if all the parties involved in female sports and pushing this agenda used a lens, a gender equity lens. Okay, when I say a lens, it's like putting on your glasses. When you put them on, if I'm putting on my gender equity lens, I'll be able to see things through the eyes of the women in sports. So if I'm budgeting, if I'm creating a budget for our organization, I'm supposed to use this lens to figure out if I were the woman in sport, would I, if I'm giving 20,000 to the male and 20,000 to the women, does that make sense? If I gave 20,000 and 30,000 to the women, I'm practicing equity to be able to balance the aspect of women's football still needs a lot to like women's sports. Let me not say football only. Women in sports still need a lot, like we've heard from the previous people speaking. Girls, women, everyone in the sport industry that is female still deals with a lot of barriers. So like, I'll give a very basic example. As a coach, you can have a boys team and a girls team. And a boys team, you might just need a ball, and the boys have already started, they're playing, they're kicking around the ball, they're having fun, full game. You have a girls team. They will need to have change, to have clothes, put on jerseys, have boots, have shoes, because like someone already said, when parents are shopping, they already know the boys are going to do this. They already have that in mind. But when they're shopping for the girls, that does not come in their mind at all. So talking about finances, sharing resources is one of the biggest like movement, the biggest aspect that would help this movement. Because if I am a Football for Good organization, and I know I've got these resources can be able to benefit other people in another community that are dealing with maybe same exact thing. For example, if you share those resources around, be it financial, it can be financial. You can come together, apply for a grant. If you applied for it alone, you might not get it. But if you applied for it as 5 organizations that are working in gender equality and equity in sports, then it gives you a much, much bigger push, so that when you get, you're able to share resources. When you have, let's say you have tools that are working for you to be able to collect more information that is going to help you advocate for more financing. When you come together and share those resources, say, this is what I have, MTG, this is what Soccer Without Borders has done on the case of girls' pregnancies. And MTG is going to come up and at the cost, this is what we are dealing with. So you have a whole build up, you have roots everywhere. Basically, it's like building roots with resourcing, and mostly financial. Right now, when it comes to financing women's sports, the momentum is building up, but that momentum also requires a lot of explaining, a lot of evidence, like it's not there. But if you come together and you know, I have this, you have that, we push together as a team, you're able to hit more targets, you're able to break more barriers than you would have as a small entity. That's why platforms like this are very important. Having these conversations are very important. You get to meet people that are dealing with the same thing that you are. You're able to share resources, you're able to share tools, and you're able to also move around the needle, like move the needle much, much faster. And you're able to do things you wouldn't have done if you were working as a single entity other than a group, like a group coming together with the same cause and pushing. Yeah, thank you. I see there's some questions in the group chat, but I think we're going to have time to respond to the questions. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you so much. And actually, one of the questions is one that had been raised by Shanil earlier that I would like to put to Herbert. Herbert, I mean, as we come up, because I would like us to be able to use this as our wrap-up session, even as we respond to the questions, is looking at the issue of resourcing and the role of counties. Having the county minister in charge of sports with us in this forum has been useful, but the question is, how do we ensure that counties understand and are making the appropriate investment? But beyond that, how do you see us being able to fill this resource gap? If you could answer generally so that we can start also to conclude as we go along. Herbert, over to you.
Thank you, Rachel. Without any criticism, I want to say that first and foremost, I think it's important that we get people who actually understand sports in the right jobs. More often than not, we end up appointing people who have zero expertise in sports to do a sports job without them understanding the dynamics and the vagaries of sports. So I think from where I sit, that it's important that the sports ministers who are there sort of develop think tanks of experts who can then drive them into understanding what sports is all about, which then gives a pathway for allocation of resources for sports. You then break it down further, allocation of resources for women in sports and facilities. So me, that would be the beginning to ensure that we have the right people in the right jobs. And also, if that is not the case, the right support systems to enable them to function properly in their roles.
Okay, thank you so much, Herbert. And I'll come back to Kristen and be able to talk about, if we're looking at increasing resources, what strategies and proposals would you put for us, even as we have your last word?
Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, everyone. Very interesting session. I really like the contributions
and
from
Kristen,
all the...
I think, sorry to interrupt, there was a question for you in the chat, if you can also just respond to it.
Let me quickly read it. Sorry, the question was... questions. What's the take on dependency on donor funding? How can communities be empowered to raise their own resources to keep their activities going? And I think that's, I think what I tried to mention is like, it's really not only about external funding or donors, it's really starting from every individuals. And the thing is, it's one part, of course, is funding aspect, but it's not only about professional sports. It's about physical activity, which you can do on a smaller scale, which benefits and contributes to, as we said, like personal well-being, which is so crucial in the development and holistic development of a child person to live in that society. So I think it's on every aspect. I shared also with Dorcas a picture on which is quite nice, depicting the differences between equality and equity. So equality, basically, you have like everyone is standing between a tree and you want to pick the fruits and you're giving everyone the same boxes, but you have people who are smaller and bigger. And of course, even though you have the same boxes, you're not able to reach to pick the fruits, the mangoes or the apples or whatever you want to be it. But if you, so to say, equity would mean based on the abilities the person or the height the person has, so to say, you're giving a bigger box to that particular person to reach, also to be able to reach the fruits. And I think this is quite nicely showing the differences between equity and equality, is really to creating that enabling environment on one hand, but also looking at the needs of each and individual person, how they are able to reach that goal and to reach it. And I think, yeah, that's I think in terms of funding the same thing. So it's really not only about funds per se, but it's really about, you need much more as also shared by Lombo Mwamba. It's really about also this understanding what's the whole thing about. It's not only about making women, putting women in leadership positions in sports federations or in sports organizations or in ministries or whatever. It's really about understanding what's the contribution, and that's not only about that they're better maybe in leadership positions because they're women, but it's much more. So I think yeah, that's from my side, and I'm really happy about these discussions and conversations, and I think it's very crucial to keep that ongoing also in the region. I think it's really beneficial and to see contributions from Zambia, Uganda, Ethiopia, and I think this is really a great initiative. And thanks MTG for spearheading that process, and looking forward to hear much more from everyone. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. And Catherine gets to have the last word. And Catherine, I think if you can be able to just tell us about your proposed strategies on how we can be able to increase funding. I know you had given us some proposals in the previous one, but also if you can give us some understanding around what would be the key takeaways from these conversations and discussions that we'd be able to use going back home.
Thank you. What I think we should take away from this conversation is, number one, you have to understand what gender equity and equality is. It's not a war between boys, girls, women. No, it's just creating a space where women and girls can have equal opportunities as men and boys do have. Let me first answer the person that asked a question when I gave an example of boys might only need a ball. A ball represents equipment. You might only need equipment to train a boys team, whichever sport. But then with girls, you have to first deal with the barriers. Some of the girls, you have to ask for permission from the parents. You have to deal with culture, religious, all these things you have to first break before you get a girl to the pitch. So the roadmap for a girl to get to wherever sports center they want to get to has thorns, broken bottles and everything. You have to first sweep that out to be able to create equal opportunity platform. I did not say you do not have to give the same attention to the boy child. No, I'm just saying create grounds whereby if you're budgeting, if you're creating a budget, if you're creating a proposal, at the back of your mind, know that if I'm going to budget, I'm going to need more than just equipment to be able to have girls and boys participate. If you take it to the higher level, if you want to have female coaches on the pitch, coaching, more female coaches on the pitch, you have to make sure there is in place resources that are going to pay them to also benefit professionally, not having a lot of female teams coached by male coaches. We don't have the role models in the community. So those things going from grassroots to the pitch, to the organizations, to the heads, and everyone reaching there, you have to make sure at the back of your mind when you're making these decisions, you know that if I want to create this position for a woman to be in this position, it's gonna take me more organizations to get her there than it would if I'm hiring a man, because a man already had extra time to get there. We are now pushing that for the women, for the girls to be able to get there and be on the same level, to have the same equal opportunities. But getting there is the process that we are working on, rather than not going against men or boys. No, it's a joint effort. It takes even men. If you have uneducated men and boys about empowerment, you're not going to be able to achieve. Let me go into finance. Talking about finances, it goes through when you talk about federations have to first of all understand as well the importance, the roles played by the women in sports in these federations. When they don't, then budgetings also are crippled. So this whole movement works, everything has to work hand in hand. It has to go together. You have to bring finance, you have to bring sensitization, you have to bring advocacy, you have to bring policy, combined all together to be able to achieve what we want to achieve. You can't push one over the other. You have to unify the pushing, unify the movement. Make sure you know you can't do only advocacy. If you only push advocacy, you're not able to get anywhere. You're making people listen, but to what? You have to have advocacy, have a policy in place to push that agenda you're advocating. You already have a policy ready. When you have people that are going to talk about finances, you already have plans already in place. Not you're going to advocate, then they ask you, okay, now we are listening, you have the platform, then what? Yeah. Thank you. I don't want to take so much time.
Thank you so much, Catherine. That has been really lovely. And thanks also for the response to you're also responding to the questions that came to you in the chat. And I think it's been really wonderful having a chance to be able to engage, to speak with the different participants, and to look at what are the strategies that we can use in looking at how we can reach gender equitable sports resourcing. I think I see a question there saying, where should we put much of the resources? Should we put them in areas with most returns or low returns? I think the conversation today is about equality and equity. It's not about the ROI on the sports, but also the question then becomes, who determines the ROI? Moving the Goalposts has invested over the years in training thousands and thousands of girls on sports in Kenya and on the coastal region. The ROI on that, I think, is clear. Yes, Catherine, I see you trying to jump in.
One thing about that, that question comes about when you start asking equal pay a lot, even with FIFA, the conversations that you have, it comes. But the thing is, you're telling me men's soccer is watched, it brings in more revenue than female women's soccer. For example, I'm using soccer as an example.
Yeah.
But when you look at advertising, the amount of money you're putting into advertising male soccer is a lot. So you can't expect a cow to give you milk that you're not feeding. You have to feed it to be able to get the milk. So we are saying, with resources, if you want returns, you have to invest to be able to get the returns. So the first investment might be very painful, but it's going to give you returns, because when you look at 51% of the fans that watch soccer are women. So that means if women's soccer was also pushed in the media, then there would be returns for women's soccer as well. Yeah, thank you.
Brilliant response, Catherine, brilliant response. And I think, Dorcas, going back to the management of Moving the Goalposts, this has been such a wonderful conversation. Clearly, there's a lot of need for us to continue having these engagements. And I think that's my challenge to you, Moving the Goalposts, Dorcas, and the UNESCO team. I think we can't end it here. Let us try and have as many of these sessions to continue to further these conversations and to ensure that we're actually getting to a point where we're engaging and having policy impact.
Thank you, Rachel. I know you have a technical hitch on your side. I just want to thank all the moderators for the day. As Rachel has said, this conversation is really important. This conversation needs to go on. We need to get everyone on board. We need to make sure that everyone understands what challenges affect women and girls' participation in sport, and how we can make girls benefit or start engaging in sport from an early age. I want to really thank UNESCO for working with us to put this webinar together. I want to thank all the partners that have been with us in the past 2 days. I want to thank Mr. Huger from UNESCO, Alison from the Gender, Sports and Social Change. I want to thank Ms. Jen Kamau from UNESCO. Rachel, thank you so much for hosting the last session. I want to thank all our panelists. They have given us great insights from the start until now. Our board chair, Ms. Alice O'War, thank you for gracing the occasion. I want to thank the Regional Director of UNESCO for gracing the occasion. Maureen Cheng, our Program Manager here at Moving the Goalposts, for the session. We had a lot of insights from Francis Mugoya, from Watoto wa Soka. We had a lot of insights from Jen Kamau, who shared her project on Let's Act on Ending Teenage Pregnancies by UNESCO. Francis Gishuki, the board member of Street Football World. Mr. Rafael Nyalaba from the Special Olympics, he actually urged us yesterday, please let us consider inclusion. When we are talking about gender equitable sports resourcing, remember there are also aspects of how do we include girls and women with disability in the sporting sector? How do we talk about issues of inclusion? Elizabeth Odera, the founder of Sadili Oval, thank you so much. And today's speakers, Dr. Anissa, I've seen a number of questions, people asking for data. If we are going to have to share a link or to share the data when we are sending the report of this session. Thank you so much, Dr. John Okwemba from Kenya Academy of Sports. Thank you so much, Susan. Thank you so much, Jen. Fatime Tibu, thank you so much for sharing with us your insights. I want to thank the last group of panelists, Mr. Herbert Mochiro. We are glad to have you. Thank you for those insights. I'm happy that you're saying that there's a lot more organizations or in the private sector who are looking towards supporting women sports. Ms. Christine Richer from GIZ, thank you so much. Lombe, those who are really inspiring contributions. Catherine, thank you so much for your passion and support for women in Uganda and also for being with us today. I just want to finalize this conversation by asking all of you to take action. In your own way, let's commit to ending gender-based violence. Let's commit to ending child pregnancies or teenage pregnancies, because that's why we came here today. We are saying that if we are working through sport, we have opportunities to tackle some of the barriers, some of the push and pulls of getting girls pregnant. And we know sport has been proved as a very strategic way of engaging with the young people in order to help them to become better members of our society. I want to thank you all. I don't know if there are any participants who have burning questions so that I can give you an opportunity to just ask your question before we can close If
yes,
not,
there is a
I want
participant.
to. Yes, okay. Please go ahead.
Okay, thanks so much, Dorcas. Let me say thanks to everyone for answering all my questions on the chat box. I think that was encouraging. So just looking at the conversation, how could you guys partner with other people who do the sport, but they do it at the grassroots level? So probably they have some insights that you guys might not have, because they must have or might have been working on their own models, and their models have been working. How can you bring such youth organizations on board so that they can work with you and maybe do presentations during such events so that it can highlight other work that is being done at the grassroots level that might not have gone to the limelight? So that was from me, and thanks so much everyone for your time and for answering the questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Omondi Omolo, for your question. And that's a very important question, because this is a partnership. And that's why we have brought in partners from our different organizations, that some of them are working actually at the grassroots. And we would love to engage with you further. I think we have your contacts. When we are organizing this session again, we will be able to invite you to give us your insights and to see how better we can collaborate to plan a bigger and better event. I know this conversation will still go on, and we would like to have as many people contribute, as many people give their opinions, their insights, so that we can shape it to become something that we own it as a sports movement, a sports for development movement, and as a women's rights movement. We want to collaborate and ensure that everyone who is working towards women and girls has a stake, and everyone has a joint understanding of where we want to move so that we can achieve our sustainable development goals. I want to thank everyone once more and to say thank you so much for attending the session. I want to give a shout out to our girls who are attending our girls from Narani Lakefield, and we have our community members from Tsagwa who are joining us. Our friends on Facebook, thank you so much for watching us live. Keep your questions coming. In the coming few days, we will take those questions and we shall be able to compile this into a report and share with UNESCO and other partners who have been here. Thank you and have a great afternoon. Bye.